情報革命が我々にもたらすもの。IoT のさらなる拡大によって物の存在価値は劇的な変化を遂げ、あなたの目を疑わせる。 AI の進化は瞬きをする間も歩みを止めず、人間の知能を超え命の概念を変える。スマートロボットの普及は人々が夢に見たような暮らしを実現する。情報革命のその先、そこには我々の暮らしを、常識を、そしてビジネススタイルを根底から変える未来が待っている。さあ目を開いて、我々を待ち受ける全く新しい世界を今日ここで見届けてください。情報革命の未来をその目に。
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Monday this week, we have made an announcement that is to talk about the great challenge of us. With respect to the ARM acquisition, since 10 years ago, I had been thinking of these possibilities and thinking of someday we will be acquiring ARMs. But I was not sure that when we can really acquire them or how we can enable them to be a part of our group. So it was a very vague idea 10 years ago. And 2 weeks ago, in Turkey, the port city restaurant there, 4 people got together for lunch. And my counterparts were the chairman and also president of the ARM Corporation. The port city in Turkey, I know that the terrorism hit Turkey just recently, so that was right after that incident. And going to Turkey itself caused worries and concerns among my friends. However, it was a very critical issue for me to visit the port city, so that lunch we enjoyed fully. But right after that, again, they witnessed a coup d'etat, and the president of the Turkey was staying at his second house, and that was the Marmaris, the port city where we had lunch. So it was bombarded by the coup group. So right before the terrorist attack and on the coup d'etat, we had a great lunch. So that was the first day we met with chairman of ARM. And the same day, we talked about the acquisition of the ARM, and that was the first time I verbalized my idea of acquiring ARM that day. So in just 2 weeks, we made a decision. Up to that time, I met the president of ARM several times, and also former CEO, Mr. Warren East. I also met him several times. So I've known them for 10 years. I've been close to them for 10 years, but that was the first time I verbalized my idea about acquiring them 2 weeks ago. So that was the announcement Monday, so 2 weeks before that Monday. So retrospectively, 2 weeks before that Monday, for the first time, I proposed that idea. And within just 2 weeks, we finalized the largest scale of acquisition in Japanese history, where usually the negotiation takes time, like going through due diligence and also the procurement of all the funds. It easily takes 6 months or so, but just in physical 2 weeks, we have finalized our negotiation. Well, having said that, last year in this room, I shared with you one keyword. I ask you a question, please raise your hand. Last year, how many of you were in this room listening to me last year? I would say 40–50% of the audience were here last year. And you listened to me last year. Then I ask you another question. The people who raised the hand now, do not raise your hand. The one who are listening to me for the first time in this room, the word singularity, the meaning of the word singularity, please raise your hand if you know the meaning. I'm impressed. Well, you are much more advanced in the knowledge. If I ask the same question, I would say 1 or 3% of the audience raise hand. In other words, the word singularity is not known to the general public yet. And the last year in this room, I asked the same question, if you know the word singularity, and probably less than 1% of the audience would know the meaning of the singularity. Then now people who listened to me last year and then people who knew about the singularity, you know the meaning of the singularity, but against this singularity, the last 1 year, you or your company, what type of countermeasures did you take for singularity? Because this is going to be the first experience for the human being. In the history of human being, this is going to be a great encounter with the technology. A human being's brain is going to be transcended by the singularity. I would say the transcendence is going to be created by the computer. So the singularity last 1 year, have you done anything, or what have you thought about it?
I have thought about this over the past year, and my own answer to this 1 year of thinking is the acquisition of ARM. So today I would also like to shed light on why it was ARM and why, in the midst of singularity, is this so critical? Is this so important? So in the game of Go, this is that final play. And many media and many analysts say that the SoftBank stock market or the stock prices have dropped, and people say that purchasing ARM was a bad mistake, and they see no synergy. As a result, the stock prices have fallen. What is the synergy between the existing SoftBank business? So when you use money as a denominator, yes, maybe the market price may have dropped, but why did I take this move? Why did I make this move? So the color of these stones that you have, and you align yourself adjacently with other stones. So in other words, you are adding and adding. So you just need to surround yourselves with extra stones to expand your footprint. But when you look at the game of Go, it does not mean that the player that actually expands their footprint incrementally is not the winner, maybe 10 plays or 20 plays down the line. Why is it now? Why is that piece placed there at that moment in time? the answer emerges later on. And if you have passion, if you immerse yourself in the game, you know, I believe, the intent of my words. So perhaps I was a bit over-passionate about that, but let me move on to the presentation. 40 years ago, when I was around 18, 19, perhaps 19 years old, so 40 years ago, I encountered one specific thing, and that was this. And I still remember vividly this encounter. I was a student. I was at UC Berkeley. I stepped out of my car, and I was flipping through a science magazine. And the page that I flipped, I encountered a very interesting image, and this was the image that I saw. For the very first time in my life, I was seeing this very mysterious picture in front of me, and I wondered what this was. There were question marks flying in my head. Is it something, perhaps, of a futuristic metropolitan city, something very geometric? And I flipped over the next page, and I learned that this is something the size that can lay on the tip of your fingertips. Very small. And I learned that that was the computer. For the very first time in my life, I realized what it was. So computers meant large, huge mainframes. That was the image. And myself, I would do programming using these very large computers. And since I was a child, I was very engrossed in Atom Boy, and Dr. Ochanomizu would be designing computers and creating Atom Boy flashlights everywhere. And that very big computer, it turns out, can be placed on your fingertips. It's transformed into something that small. And I learned of this for the first time. And I felt my fingertips and my toes on my feet tingle. It was so exciting. It was as if I was moved by a movie, a book. And there are times when you're feeling and you feel overwhelmed. Your blood flushes towards your brain all at once. And your fingertips there's no blood flowing through your fingertips, and they tingle. And that was the state I was in. And at that moment, I started thinking very quickly, and I realized that I was crying. I was just standing there, dazed, and I was just crying and crying. The tears would not stop because I realized that for the very first time, mankind has invented something that will surpass our own brain, our own possibilities. The impact that this would have on mankind was unthinkable. It was something even more intellectual than mankind would ever be, and mankind created that himself. Something very scary, but at the same time, something so exciting. So I cut out this picture, and I put this in this little plastic case, and I placed it under my pillow when I went to bed. And I would put it in my knapsack when I went to school. So every day, every night, every morning, I would use that plastic case, put it under my notebook, and I would at times look at the picture and grin. I was looking at an idol, a star, a celebrity, and smiling. And this is true. I really did this because I was so moved, because I was so emotional. 40 years. I have lived with this passion, and I have enclosed that emotion. SoftBank, why semiconductors? Why chip? I'm not interested in manufacturing. Why semiconductors? And I think many people just don't get it. But when I was 19, that day, 40 years ago, that emotion finally, the star, the celebrity, the idol that I have loved so much, I am able to greet this idol once again. And I am still so overwhelmed with excitement. I truly believe that amongst the keywords that pertain to singularity, this is the most important milestone, the most important play that could ever be made. And with each paradigm shift, SoftBank has challenged ourselves. When the PC emerged, this is the year when we established SoftBank. The microcomputer, the chip, when I was 19, immediately after, I created a full keyboard computer, a small-size computer, and created a digital dictionary. I was probably the first one to create it in the world, and from there onwards, I think many students merited from this. But I created the very first electronic dictionary: German, French, Japanese, Chinese, English, Italian. I put these languages in this dictionary, and I filed for patent. I added a speech synthesizer, and I created a prototype, and I licensed the patent to Sharp. So that was also the very first time that I earned money at the age of 19. So I encountered the microchip, and the very first student creation over the summer break, you can call it, was this dictionary. And I was studying abroad in the US as a foreigner, so I wanted to learn the pronunciation of the English language as well. That is why I included that speech synthesizer. I was still a student, and at Berkeley, maybe 6, 7 professors at Berkeley, I had them work as my subordinates, and we created the prototype, we filed for patent, and came up with that first unit. So from the beginning, or even before the beginning of SoftBank, the seeds were there. But when we look at the history of SoftBank after a few years down the line, when I was 22 maybe, or 24, 22, 24, I founded SoftBank.
So every time paradigm shifts, SoftBank challenged itself. So it is disruptive challenge. It is not really the continuous evolution. According to the different types of a paradigm shift, SoftBank always challenged itself. But always our mainstream theme is information revolution. The technology evolves, therefore, every time paradigm shifts, we just adapt to the paradigm shift. And we always try to focus on the core of the paradigm shift. At the beginning, we didn't have much budget, so that we just try to sell the softwares for PC and also publications around it. And the next paradigm shift, we started working on the internet. I talked to Yahoo in the United States. I invested into Yahoo and founded Yahoo Japan. So now PC to the internet. And now the mainstream of the internet moved from PC to mobile devices. Again, we challenged again, little less than 2 trillion yen to acquire Vodafone. And this time, the biggest paradigm shifts ever in human being history is now ahead of us. Now PC to internet, then internet shifted from PC to mobile devices, but now everything is going to be connected to the internet. The singularity, the word has been repeating. The brain of computer will transcend that of the human being. The brain of a computer will exceed the intelligence of human being. When it comes to human intelligent capacity, we have the measurement called IQ. The average of IQ of human being is 100. So when I take the standard deviation, then average is 100. Then Einstein or Leonardo da Vinci, their IQ was around 200. So they're exceedingly capable of the intelligence, which means that they are called genius. So the genius of human being is IQ 200 or so. Then in 30 years or so, we are going to have the intelligence of the computer. Then what about the comparison between the artificial intelligence IQ and human being? So human being's genius is 200 against average of 100. Then what about AI? AI has IQ of 10,000. 200 is human genius. Then when it comes to AI at the time of singularity in 30 years, their intelligence capacity is going to be IQ 10,000 against average of 100, which means that the average person cannot really challenge computer for the game of Go or Shogi or chess. In the world of these board games, now it is already imminent. But not just the board games, but also everywhere in the world that human beings is really overwhelmed by the AI. Can you challenge Da Vinci or Einstein? The AI has IQ 10,000 for regular things in the day-to-day lives that I don't think that human beings want to challenge AI. So when that world comes to us, what's going to happen to us? What is really going to happen to us? For what purpose are we welcoming the singularity world? I think that singularity will enable us to live happier. It is very positive things. Whether you like that phenomena or not, when the singularity world comes in someday in the future, then how do we really respond to that world? Then I give you some examples. Then why the computer's brain or intelligence will evolve that much. The human being's brain, the brains are the same in the mammals, but we have cells in our brains. And in principle, cells of the brain or number of the cells really increase the intelligent activities. So that is a limit of mammal's brain. So mice and the dogs, these are less number of cells of brain than monkeys. And humans have more cells than monkeys, so that's why intelligence is bigger for us. And when it comes to the cells, this is the just contacting of two cells and also neurons. When it gets contacted, there is electricity charged, and when it is divided, then there will be no electricity. So it is a binary theory. In case of transistor too, whether the electricity charged or not, that is equally expressed in a binary. In case of human beings, we have 30 billion cells in our brain. Number of neurons, the 30 billion cells will be actually reflected in the computers. About 25 years ago, I predicted that the number of transistors in the brain will exceed that of the human being in 2018. And about 5 years ago, I came up with a new 30-year vision. And I recalculated that. Again, it was 2018. So since 25 years ago, I've been talking about this math, about the number of cells and the number of transistors. So I'm just talking about hardware for brain and also the semiconductors. So when the hardware capability exceed that of the human brain, can we really exceed the capability of human beings? No, we need to have software. However, as far as hardware is related, then we can have exactly same hardware as human brains. But in 30 years, the one-chip computer can have almost 1 million times of that of the human beings, so that the binary capability of the processing power is almost becoming 1 million times. So when you just count the number of cells, then cells are much higher in human beings. But in case of transistor numbers, it's almost 1 million times more. Whether it is software, data, an algorithm, any type of deep learnings are possible. And then they can do so the millions of times at seconds when you compare to human beings. Deep learning. Again, this is another key word. We talk about AI, and the key word for the artificial intelligence is deep learning, and the key word for the deep learning is big data. Massive amount of data are collected and processed and analyzed, and also learned that meaning, and again think about what happens. And that is a transcendence. And I would say this is a birth of the transcendence of intelligence. That is the singularity. And then there are three keywords of the transcendence: AI, smart robot, and also IoT. These three are the three keywords of singularity. So this singularity, all the data on the earth can be fed into this brain. What would be the key for that? To collect all the information on the world, you really have to have chips.
Without the chip, you cannot acquire the data. Now this chip will absorb, gather every piece of data. And then the next question is, how many of these chips can we propagate around the world within the next 20 years? Within the next 20 years, I do want somebody in 20 years' time to validate this. So again, in the next 20 years, ARM will propagate 1 trillion chips around the world. 1 trillion. Somebody please make a record of this number. 20 years from now, validate this number. ARM will have distributed 1 trillion chips across the world. And from 1 trillion chips in parallel, simultaneously, in real time, all of the data around the world, around the globe, will be absorbed, will be collected. Now this ultra intellect, the world of singularity, will be the quickest, the smartest, and it will predict, it will forecast what will happen on this planet. smart robots that are equipped with this intellect. They will be companions of us, mankind. They will coexist with us. They will work with us. And issues that humans could not solve, for instance, starting with natural disasters, these robots will protect us. Or uncurable diseases can be cured. These robots will save us from such diseases. We as people will be more enriched, we'll be more productive, we'll be more happy, and we'll be able to welcome, perhaps, such a world. In 300 years, within 3 centuries, the average lifespan of us humans will exceed 200 years. That is my prediction. Diseases will be non-existent. So the important key to singularity is IoT. 1 trillion chips around the world, and these chips will be embedded into every possible thing. So then, what is SoftBank's growth strategy in light of IoT? So as I have repeated many a time so far, the focal point of SoftBank Group will be ARM. So let me ask some questions about ARM. Prior to making our announcement Monday, who in the audience knew of the company ARM? Please raise your hand. Thank you. Wonderful. I asked the question about singularity and the meaning. Many hands were raised. So if I ask this audience, 40% again raised their hands. 60% did not know of ARM. So again, a key company of IoT, ARM. Let me introduce to you a bit of this company ARM. For those of you who knew of ARM, the company ARM, please deepen your understanding on this occasion, and please understand why I was so moved by this company. Now, the company ARM does not create semiconductors. They design the chips. So they do research and development. They design, and these designed chips are produced by many other companies, and ARM licenses the design. They hand over the design sheet. So these chip makers, Renaissance, and here in Japan, for instance, or TI, Texas Instruments, Qualcomm, Apple, Samsung. So you hear of these many companies. MediaTek is another one. So ARM provides their core design to these companies. Now, these respective companies add on peripherals, memories, graphics. And they add on the peripheral functions to the core. Qualcomm adds the modem bit, so they enhance the modem capabilities using the design. So the logos that you see in the above, ARM provides the design to these companies, the chips. And then these companies create system on chip as the finalized product. I will show you pictures later on. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we opened up our PC, you had the motherboard, and on the motherboard, you had the Intel CPU, and then you have the memory chip. The I/O chip would be aligned, allocated on the motherboard. And that PC motherboard is now just one chip. This is what we call the system on chip. So again, the companies that you see, NXP, Spreadrum, MediaTek, Huawei, NVIDIA, they create the system on chip. And they create the final chip. And TSMC in Taiwan, for instance, does the production. And they are put into, let's say, mobile phones, smartphones, automotive, and consumer electronics. Now, in 20 years' time, I mentioned that 1 trillion chips will be propagated around the world. And that was my prediction that I stated. 14.8 billion just for last year, ARM-based chips have been shipped around the world. The world, we now have a population of 7 billion. So 2 ARM chips are being somehow used by the 7 billion people on this earth. So 2 per person on an annual basis. So every year, 2 chips are being used by the population of 7 billion. Now this is growing and growing. Now where's their market share? Smartphone. They possess a 95%, maybe a 97% actually share. Tablets, wearables, storage, automotive. So ARM possesses a very large market share in these respective markets. For those of you who did not know of ARM, I am sure you have heard the company Intel inside. And Intel is inside your PCs. Intel CPU chip unit, in comparison, ARM has a more than tenfold in comparison at the current moment. I don't quote me on this because please somebody needs to do the accurate math, but it's that scale. Tenfold difference versus Intel. And many people were not aware of this. Now, outside of this room, for those that knew of ARM prior to Monday, I think only 1% would say they knew of ARM. Less than 1% probably knew of ARM. But we all use ARM chips. We did not know, but we actually use already. So what are some of their products? Basically, they have 3 lineups: Cortex-A, the R, and the M. A is for the application processor. This is for the smartphones or more advanced products. So this is where Cortex-A resides. R is real-time. So these are areas where you need speed, real-time. So chips Cortex-R chips are used in this category. So application processor is A, so more advanced. And then we also have the M, the Cortex-M. Microcontroller M.
So this is embedded type of processor. So this is to control the microcontrollers. You have iPhones. The iPhones is the most popular mobile devices in Japan, and also I would say that from one manufacturer companies, then iPhone is a pioneer in the smartphone in the world too. So when you think of the CPU of iPhones, Apple manufactures themselves. However, the CPU is based on A9, and inside A9, the core is again ARM. Apple create a system on chip, and then they use ARM core. So this is almost like Intel in PC, and Apple embedded ARM cores into their processor, and also graphics, which is upper right-hand side corner. That is the functionality. The center of this chip, little lower than the center of the chip, that area is the caching functionality. So this is a memory for cache. So the semiconductor experts just a look of this chip, you can see the location of the functionality of iPhones. So iPhone CPU A9 processor includes ARM, the 64-bit ARM B8. Two of them are inside A9 processor. Then what about Snapdragon? This is Qualcomm's. The Qualcomm chip outside the iPhone, the Qualcomm is the largest in number for Android smartphones, even in Qualcomm chips. As you see on the white squared 857, 4 of A47 and also 4 of A53, so that 8 cores of ARMs are inside the Qualcomms. In case of NVIDIA, they also have 8 cores. This is big and little concept. Big 4 and little 4, A57 and 53. And furthermore, Samsung also has 8 cores in processors of smartphones. Again, A57 and N53. So this is based on a big and little concept. So 8 cores are in chips. 8 cores sharing separate functionality and rendering into very powerful processings. So when they are waiting in the resting mode, then they do not really have to work. All 8 core do not have to work. So 8 core means that it's contributing to the energy savings. So 1 core can just be active out of 8 cores. You don't have to use all of them, which means that the battery can stay longer. 8 cores means you have longer life of batteries. 1 core is active, 7 cores are asleep. So big, little concept. The bigger cores, smaller cores, 4 and 4 give this. Another example, Huawei. 8 cores. TI, two cores of M4 and 2 cores of A15s. Renesas, 1 core of A9. Infineon, again, 1 core of M4. So for the different purpose of use, you can change the type of cores. This is really a motherboard. In the center, you find a bus, and above and below the bus, you see different types of functionality such as memory, graphics, and then other necessary components of the chips are added onto it. Then one chip can serve as a motherboard of the old PC. Same for the NXP. So for the use of the chips, you can use core of A, R, or M types, and around that core, you add functionalities onto it. That's called the system on chips. And in the smartphones, based on ARM core, not just one, but several of them are embedded into the smartphone. 5, 10s. And at the same time, in the main CPU, the application processor, they have 4 or 8 cores of ARM's chips are there. So if you compare to the situation of 2009, just last 6-7 years, now GPU capability became 300 times, and also communication capability 20 times, and the graphics 24 times, processing power 100, and a number of sensors 5 times. This is just the evolution of last 5-6 years. So if you go through another 5 years, another 5 years, another 5 years, it is going to be almost like the times to the factor of 3. And the power of 3, it is going to be soon that we are reaching to 1 trillion. Then 2 to the power of 20, that is 1 million times. So if you double it for 20 times, then it becomes 1 million. Then 2 to the power of 20. If you repeat doubling 20 times, then it is 1 million times. So I said in 30 years, 1 million times. That's because every 18 months you've seen the doubling of the capability, which means that in 30 years, it is going to be 2 to the power of 20. That is true for the automobiles. Even the current version of automobile, you have so much of chips, of ARMs. In the future, that's when the autonomous driving comes in, then what's going to happen? So that the automobile is going to be the supercomputers, driving supercomputers. This is going to be a smart robot. So the robot doesn't mean that they have to look like a human.
走るスーパーコンピューター
So the supercomputer, the automobile, is a running supercomputer. So again, the ultra intellect is equipped in the car, and this car does not have any accidents whatsoever. It is a driving, it is a running, it is a moving supercomputer, it is a moving super robot. And if there is an accident, then everyone would think, a human was perhaps driving it. So that is the future that is ahead of us. So ARM, IoT, 5 years' time, what will happen? 1.6 billion for smart home, for smart city, 1.5 billion, and for other devices, 1.1 billion. So this is the forecast for the number of IoT devices released to the market. 60% annual growth, 50% annual growth, and 40% annual growth, respectively, for the smartphone, for the smart city, and for other devices. So everything is on the growth trajectory. What was the value demanded of a PC? It was the price, it was the performance, the laptop. Power consumption was key. Now with the smartphone, again, low power consumption was even more critical. When you use your smartphone, you feel very anxious and you feel stressful when you're about to run out of battery. It feels like you are running out of breath when you see your phone running out of battery. So when the smartphone runs out of battery, suddenly, abruptly, you cannot connect to people, and it means that your actions are limited. So again, power consumption is even more critical. It is like oxygen for humans. For smartphones, oxygen is the battery. So why is ARM so strong? The fact that it only uses very low power, and it is the best in this regard. 2 days ago, I think it was, around 1 a.m. in the morning, I believe it was, round about that hour, the founder of ARM, Akon's founder, I was talking on the phone with this person, and I asked, why? How did you found Akon? How did you evolve it to ARM? And I was asking over the phone. And this is what he said. Well, ARM from the UK, well, it will leave from the UK, and I feel a bit sad. So I said, no, wait. Do not feel sad, I said. I will be carrying on your intent, your passion, your spirit. So I wanted to ask, what was the founding principle? And we were very much aligned. Akon, when I created Akon, the company, and I created a company even before that, but I just didn't have the funding. When I founded ARM, the biggest present is we didn't have money, so we had 2 engineers instead. Only 2 engineers. And the risk, reduced instruction set, this concept was leveraged. And it was the first computer created in the UK used Akon, the ARM chip. And the first prototype was actually an error. The pin connecting to electricity, so you have pins, edgy pins, and it connects to the circuit, and it serves various functions. Now the pins that should be connected to the electricity circuit were not connected, but it was moving. Regardless, the pin is not connected, but it actually computed. Why? And they looked into what was happening. And yes, the pin was not connected to electricity, but the leakage of electricity actually drove the chip. So the very first prototype of ARM was very low power consumption. From day one, they used leakage current. There was no connection, but they were using the leak current. And that actually mobilized the chip. So again, ARM, from the very beginning of its inception, because of this mistake, they found this low energy consumption performance. And from there onwards, they took a very different approach versus Intel. And that is how ARM evolved. That is why ARM is embedded in these smartphones, because they prolong the life of the battery, and the battery is the oxygen of the smartphone. And this is the key, the critical key for IoT. We want the battery to last 10 years in the era of IoT. Because in the world of IoT, it's not just us humans, it's about the sheep, it's about the cattle, it's about cows connected to the internet. And you have sheep herders and the dogs that herd sheep. And I was drawing a little picture. And I drew a sheep drone. I invented that. So not a sheep dog, it's a sheep drone. So the herding activity, you see these dogs in Australia running around, gathering the cattle, and the dogs go after the sheep, and they bring them back to the ranch. But the dogs no longer do this. The drones can just fly over the ranch and just bow next to the sheep. So the sheep herding dogs will have a lot of time on their hands because the drones will do their work. And how will the drones work? IoT embedded into the collar of the sheep. Now this collar is mobilized with batteries. So 10 years, you just place the collar and just leave it alone for 10 years. That is how important batteries are. That is how important low power consumption is for the world of IoT. And that is why it is ARM. Cortex-M is key. And with M, we do have a full lineup with the Cortex-M suite as well. It's scalable, so it is upward compatible. And the instruction sets are all compatible. So after the application software is developed, it is upward compatible. So that is another important key. So for Cortex-M, we have M0 plus, battery life 15 years, 90 nanometer. We also have the Cortex M3, 4, and the 7. They all carry different functions. They all carry different roles and responsibilities. Now the size. For those who play golf, you have that little dimple on the ball, and it's smaller than that dimple on the golf ball. This is the Cortex-M, Infineon's chip example that you're seeing on this image. Very small. That is why it is cheap. And again, low energy consumption. And many chip manufacturers are using ARM core to apply it to many, many different areas. And they have a dedicated system on chips based on this application. Now for the M, there are two very important functions. The first, Embed Os. We have iOS and Android for the smartphone. Now for IoT, Cortex-M, there is the Embed Os, which was created by ARM, included. And that is the OS, again, critical for the world of IoT, in the world of PCs, Windows, and for smartphones, iOS and Android, and Embed Os. So ARM also has an OS. They also have Trust Zone, which is for security. And in the upper layer, we have Embed Device Server. So in the area of cloud, again, ARM has functions that serve the cloud services. So in a very secure way, security is valued, and at the same time, they entail the entire ecosystem of IoT. Now, Embed OS, the platforms that cater to this OS are shown here. Many, many devices already have been released to the market using Embed OS, and these are all going to be in the IoT devices depending on the feature and functions. Now, for components, you have Embed components. In other words, the actual parts already they are fusing in the market. That is why 15 billion ARM chips, so 2 for every person on this planet. And that is the scale of the distribution. Now, again, in such times, rather than the compute speed, the most important aspect will be security. So even in one physical room, it will be bombarded with IoT devices. In 20 years down the line, 1 trillion of these will be distributed across the world. And when we engage in such times, just imagine what will happen. Let's say somebody with malicious intent hacks the network, hacks into an IoT device, let's say, and suddenly one day, across the world, viruses or that virus simultaneously wakes up and begins malicious activity. What would happen? The airplanes in the sky will fall and crash simultaneously. The highways and the automobiles running the highways on one day, on X day, at X time, X minute, X second, simultaneously on every highway. The autonomous driving cars or your standard cars, all the brake systems will stop, lose their function. They can no longer brake. And all the highways on this planet will be congested. There will be traffic accidents all over the world. So terrorist acts will also be different. More advanced terrorist attacks may take place as a result. So again, in the world of IoT, in the world of ultra intellect, regardless of whether we like it or not, that era is coming. So what if somebody hacks and cyber terrorism attacks are made? The results will be drastic. And so that is why security is so important, even more important than the compute process power, the low energy consumption. Security is key. For instance, personal authentication, mobile settlements, contents protection, and enterprise security. So these are more or less smartphone examples, but something even more mission critical, the brakes, the engines of cars, or for nuclear plants, the controlling station of nuclear plants. ARM, trust zone, security will have to be in place. Without that, people will be just too worried. Now, why is ARM's trust zone so secure? So gaming or spreadsheets, applications, most of them are on the left side. So general application processors can do this. But in the trusted zone, this is actually inside the core of ARM. Now, trust zone is different from the general standard process. It is deemed as secure, and it cannot be accessed from the internet. It is closed off. So the general public just cannot access. It is controlled securely, and this is dubbed the trust zone. It is locked. So if it is a standard software key, if you have 1 million, then one software controls everything. And if you hack into one software piece, then it means that you can break all 1 million keys. But for the ARM trust zone, what's amazing is that 1 million chips, hardware-wise, each has specifically unique keys. Very interesting. So the chips are printed in massive volumes, but with 1 million prints, each and every time in the hardware, a different key is assigned, and that is ARM's patent. So I can go on and on. Maybe I could go on for 3 days. And I know I have exceeded my time slot, so I'll try to wrap up. So because I've been thinking about this for 10 years, so I can go on and on. Bear with me. So let me begin to wrap up. So they have more than 1,300 licenses that they offer from ARM, and just 1 year, last year, they have released 1.4 billion worth of smartphones embedded with their core. I don't know what the actual unit is worldwide of the smartphone distribution, but you can note that the numbers are massive for ARM. And 86 billion accumulated chip shipments to date. Now, again, as I repeat, 20 years from now, this number will be 1 trillion. So again, you see the numbers, and you see their track record. Now, they have also 1,300 partners, more than 1,300 partners. So this is the ecosystem. They offer that platform for this ecosystem. Now, an ARM's head office on the 18th, so this week, Monday, I visited their office. And I met with the main executives of ARM and SoftBank. Myself, Son, why do I love ARM so much? Why have I been sending these love calls? And why did I make that sudden proposal 2 weeks ago? I was very passionate in explaining my intent, and they were very, very welcoming. So it was quite a moving moment. And you can see me smiling, grinning in the middle, because this was probably the best day ever in my life. And I was just smiling and conversing with the management team of ARM. So, along with ARM, SoftBank will evolve, and SoftBank will be placing ARM as the centerpiece, the focal point of SoftBank Group, and we will drive a paradigm shift. SoftBank's main businesses have changed with each and every paradigm shift. Our main business, you may think that we are a telco provider, but that began 10 years ago, only 10 years ago. Before that, we sold 0 mobile devices. Prior to that, we were a company managing Yahoo, the internet company, and even before that, we were a wholesale company, a shipper for PCs. So we change our form every 10 years, and with every paradigm shift, we have changed ourselves. People may ask us, what do we do? So in a nutshell, we are an information innovation provider. Ryoma Sakamoto is my hero. During the Meiji era, he was the person that led these activities. And in my meeting room, I have a large picture of him, and I use this in my meeting room. I use this as my meeting room. And our ambitions have to be aimed high, I learned from him. So information innovation has been the dream since I was 19, the day that I just stood there and cried and cried and cried. I felt that was the reason why I was born. That was my mission of life, and I have poured my passion, I poured my life into this information innovation, and that is my life mission. So since I was a student, I knew that computers were connected. That was a given. I mean, in the beginning days, maybe the PCs were not connected, but everything, as a student, everything was connected. Berkeley's version of Unix. In other words, Berkeley, the creator of Unix, emails were flying around every day since then. Application software, those software pieces that were created would be shared among students and professors at Berkeley. Now, do you know the origin of SoftBank, the company name? We are a bank of software. So in a broader context, software means software and data, and we've dubbed this soft. So if it's the hard versus software, so in other words, the brain cells that I spoke of, and the knowledge and the wisdom, that's the software. And data is the knowledge as well. So in other words, what is input into the brain cells, that is the knowledge and the wisdom is the software, the algorithm, and what is equivalent to knowledge is the data. And we augment all that together, and in a broader context, we call this soft, and we bank that. So when I founded SoftBank the very first day, I already had the image of what we know today as cloud. So the buzzword is cloud. The modern word is singularity. The modern word now is ultra intellect. But again, going back to when I was 19, when I first saw that picture in the Science magazine, the images that flew around in my brain, were just so overwhelming, and that is why I was in tears. So again, we ought to move forward and create that next paradigm shift. So in summary, we are always evolving, changing. We even change our name, our form with each and every paradigm shift, like a fish. And this is a non-sequential evolution. And everything began from this one picture, this one chip picture. Why are we doing this? We want to create happiness through information innovation. We have the super intellect now in our hands. And this is not to minimize mankind. It is to make mankind happy. It is to make incurable diseases disappear from this planet. It is to create social infrastructure where there are no accidents. Evolve society in this way and protect humans from natural disasters. That is why we are engaged in information revolution. Yes, in a given moment in time, the form of technology is one thing now, will change in the future as well. But the reason why SoftBank exists is we want to carry on this mission for the next 300 years, revolutionizing information and making people happy. So I will conclude the main part of my presentation, and I would like to introduce the next speaker.
Pepper, a robot with emotions. And the founder of Pepper, the inventor of Pepper, is someone that is very, very dear to me. So what's so different about Pepper? Not only the fact that it can move its legs and arms, not only the fact that it can speak, not only the fact that it can dance. The most striking, unique feature of Pepper, what distinguishes it dramatically from past robots, is that Pepper has emotions. Emotional AI. It has an emotional engine. Why was this so necessary? I think people 100 years into the future will probably thank us for this. And people 300 years from now will say, thanks to you, the world was transformed. You really, really helped improve our world because now we have a super intelligence. Intelligence. In terms of intelligence, these robots will surpass all of us. If these robots were to work just for productivity, what would happen? If they were purely after productivity, they will be emotionless. They will be cold, machine-like. Very, very terrible, fearsome machines which are pursuing just productivity. And if they were equipped with such intelligence, I think you see people like that in our world, people who are cold-hearted, people who instigate fear in others' hearts, but have massive amounts of intellectual capability and knowledge. What if we had people like that? They'd be fearsome. Do you want somebody like that in your family, as friends? Do you want to see people like that in your society? No. So even if the intellectual capability and knowledge was a little bit less than that, you want family members, you want friends who are compassionate, who are full of emotion, who are willing to throw themselves down the line for others with their limited intellect and their limited knowledge. So why can't we add a compassionate heart and a motivation to work and serve people, work for and serve people, to these super intellectuals, then we can make these robots work for us. They'll not be Darth Vaders. They'll become the Jedi. People's brains, people's emotions are actually function based on 3 substances within our brain: dopamine, noradrenaline, and serotonin. And fear and happiness and sadness, all of these are controlled. And even deeper and even more sophisticated than all of these emotions would be love. So we emulated these 3 brain hormones using the computer. The first time people see a computer, they'll become tense. Pepper will feel tense in front of somebody it has not met before, and Pepper will feel at home and comforted in front of family members that it knows. For example, young children, when they come to a home for the first time, will be tense meeting people for the first time. But when he or she goes home, they'll feel at home. So Pepper, for the first time in human history, was able to emulate these 3 brain hormones which generate emotions. Those of you who knew, I'm sure you knew about this, but if you didn't, please act surprised. Give me some reaction, please. And that is incorporated into running supercomputers, robots that can run. And they'll be embedded into cars, future cars. And the first car that would be equipped with this capability is a car developed by Honda. So let me introduce the person in charge of the development of this car, a senior managing officer of Honda, Mr. Matsumoto. From Honda Motor Company Limited, member of the board, senior managing officer and director in charge of F1 activities, and the president and CEO of Honda R&D Company Limited, Mr. Yoshiyuki Matsumoto. Now, Mr. Honda's cars will be infused with love and emotions.